On the Record is on the ground in South America covering the latest breaking news in the arrest of Joran van der Sloot. Van der Sloot, accused of brutally murdering a 21-year-old woman in Peru, was arrested yesterday in Chile and sent back to Peru today. Former LAPD homicide detective Mark Furman joins us from Peru. Mark, what have you learned on the ground in Peru?
Greta, we've learned quite a bit. And we started this investigation from the news. You heard that there was blood, there was a stabbing, but in fact that is all not true. We learned directly from the medical examiner's office today that the victim was lying on her back, fully clothed, not covered. She had blood coming from the left side of her head, from her ear and her nose, and there was blunt force trauma to the back of her head and her lower neck, of which the blunt force trauma caused hemorrhaging in the brain and caused death. That is the cause of death. We also learned that the level of decomposition, the process of putrefaction had started, which now when you backdate trying to estimate the time of death, it actually fits within the bracket of time that Joran van der Sloot was with the victim. That's what we know right now, and it's completely different from the initial reporting.
Mark, in terms of the investigation, was any weapon found that caused the blunt force trauma? Was there a sexual assault? And are there fingernail scrapings like she fought her assailant where we might find DNA?
Okay, we'll start with the last first. Fingernail scrapings here is a standard procedure, but those findings, if anything, wouldn't be available yet. The victim, there was no sign of sexual assault, but they can't rule out sexual relations. She was fully clothed, and there was no indication that there was that attempt to a rape or a sexual assault. And as far as the weapon, the ME made some interesting speculations. He opined that the kind of box frame to the bed, a European-style bed where the mattress sits on top, the mattress was askew on the corner. It was away, as if the victim, right where she laid below that corner, possibly that corner of that hardwood frame could have been what she collided with in the back of her head. But he opined this, that the force, if it was her that fell or tripped, would not be sufficient to cause the massive damage to her head, that she would have to have been driven into that bed frame by some other force, that being another human.
Mark, thank you. And we have shocking new information about this case tonight. Yesterday we reported bombshell news. Van der Sloot allegedly paid for his trip to South America by extorting money from Natalie Holloway's mother. Prosecutors in Alabama say Van der Sloot promised to tell Beth Holloway what really happened to her daughter in Aruba in exchange for $250,000. Now on May 10th, Holloway transferred Van der Sloot $15,000 as a down payment. We have news about how that alleged crime occurred and who was watching. Joining us is Bo Diddle, Chairman and CEO of Bo Diddle and Associates. Bo, what can you tell me about what happened on May 10th? Who was there, and was it recorded in any way?
Okay, first of all, he should never have left Aruba after May 10th. May 10th, before May 10th, what he was doing was he was contacting someone saying that his father died and he wanted to let everyone know about the whereabouts where he buried Natalie Holloway. So the mother was contacted. Then the person in between, the contact person, communicated with them, and then they made a meeting on May 10th down in Aruba. Upon this meeting, which was videotaped and everything, they brought the FBI involved. We were going to go down there with a team of guys. We were told not to. The FBI was going to handle it. In wherever it was, he made statements incriminating that he pushed her down, she hit her head, she got hit, he got his dad, they buried her. He was going to tell her where it was. He wanted $250,000. So the agreement was giving $25,000 up front, $10,000 cash, which was given to him, and this was all videotaped with all his statements. $15,000 was wire transfer. Why the wire transfer? This way we have him on wire transfer of money on extortion. So you have extortion, wire transfer. You also had the Reuben government that knew all about the FBI being there. So you have them with him making these admissions. Under the Reuben law, at that time after those admissions were made, they could have held him on suspicion for at least 30 days, and then the FBI could have locked him up at that time. He then slips out of the surveillance or whatever had happened, and he goes to South America, and it looks as though then he kills this young girl, which is horrible. And I've been after this guy since this thing happened, and I'm just horrified that this guy killed again.
Bo, in terms of the FBI essentially was set up this operation where they videotaped the extortion, where Joran van der Sloot was extorting the money. After the extortion, has the FBI given any reason whatsoever, when they had the crime on tape, why they didn't make an arrest of him?
Put it this way, Greta. If I was involved with that investigation and controlled it, he would have been locked up in a room after he made the extortion statements. He also took the money. You had the crime committed there. Why give him any more access? We knew he did flights so many times and he disappeared. I'm just really angry. The go-between was emailing back and forth with the go-between person, and it's horrible, Greta.
Well, you should know, Bo, that I just spoke recently in the last half hour to the Attorney General in Aruba, who says that, yes, indeed, Aruba does extradite to the United States for financial and fraud crimes, that the Aruba government had been contacted about 6 weeks before now to participate in this surveillance, and that after the May 10th crime went down, when it was all videotaped, that he was under surveillance, and the Aruban government notified the United States that Joran was leaving. And we're going to have more on this. Bo, thank you.
Thank you, Greta.
And your legal panel is back. Joining us in San Francisco, former Assistant DA Jim Hammer, and here in Washington, criminal defense attorneys Ted Williams and Bernie Grimm. And it's always nice to see all of you gentlemen. I'm sorry it's done such grim news, but speaking of grim, I'll start with you, Bernie. FBI, wow.
Yeah, this is terrible. It's bizarre because it was 5 years to the day on this homicide, and it's also bizarre that this was actually preventable, because it seems to me, and Ted knows this as well, when you make videotape cases, the cases they make against my client, whether it's bribery or drugs, they rip the guys, they call it, right in the room, right there, tell them it's been videotaped, and usually can induce a confession. So they let the guy just get out of the country, then he's in Peru, and this poor woman is dead.
Jim, this whole crime is caught on tape, videotape, that the FBI makes themselves and had planned for it and got it. You know, it's stunning. What could they possibly have been waiting for? What did they need more to make an arrest?
Well, they didn't need more, and if the FBI at the end of the day screwed up, I'm going to be the first person to say that it's partly their fault, perhaps, that this young woman is dead. Having said that, if I had the choice as a prosecutor or investigator in this case, Greta, between making a solid extortion case or perhaps following a bit longer and finally making the homicide case, the murder case against Natalie Holloway, that's the one I'd choose. I'm hoping that what they were trying to do is get more and more information to finally make the murder case against Natalie Holloway. If they just drop the ball to Greta, then they've got dirt on their hands.
Hoping. I don't know where you even get that. There's nothing to suggest they were even doing that. The whole thing was to get a financial extortion fraud case, Ted.
Yeah, you know, I'm outraged, and let me just pick up on where Jim Hammer left off. No, Jim, they didn't have to make another case there in Aruba. They could have arrested him then and tried to squeeze information. They could have brought him back to the States, perhaps, and extradited him. There are some ways, as you've already represented, that he could have been extradited. Yep. The FBI dropped the ball as far as I can see in this case.
Ted, when I talked to the Attorney General in Aruba, when I talked to the Attorney General in Aruba, it seemed to me he was doing everything. I mean, he was trying to be polite and be courteous to the United States government. But I'll tell you, I did not get the sense he was very happy about this. Jim?
Yeah, extortion case would be great. Listen, they got Al Capone on tax evasion. If that's all we can get, fine. But the real goal in here is getting him for the Natalie Holloway murder. This case had been screwed up so many times, and I said this months and years ago when we talked about it. The way to break this case is to lie low like they have for a long period of time. Get this killer talking.
Jim,
wait a second,
Jim.
Ted. Get the killer talking and actually make a murder case. I'd hold out for a murder case any day if I could make it. You can get him talking in the United
States. I want him talking in Alabama. Bring his butt back to Alabama, and if they would have brought him back to Alabama,
I don't believe the thing the guy says, Ted.
Would not be dead.
He's got to lead you to evidence besides his empty words if you're going to make a murder case on this guy.
Bernie, I might be more sympathetic to Jim's version if the fact is he hasn't talked multiple times. I mean, he's talked to us multiple times, you know, and there was just, I mean, he has told so many stories at this time.
Yeah, this kid has no credibility. I mean, what he said to Fox News, what he said after he was arrested, what he said to his co-conspirators in this case, every time there's a different story. I was there, I did it, I didn't do it, I wasn't involved. There's alibis, completely unreliable. I mean, with Jim, sort of the jury's out on the FBI, but if they drop the ball.
I think the jury's out on the FBI. To me, you know, once they knew that he was headed for the airport and he was hitting the road with cash from Beth Holloway, I mean, what in the world did they think at that point? They're going to go chase him down in Cambodia,
I mean,
someplace for an extortion? This was the whole plan.
He used the extortion money to get out of the country, and then he was gambling with the extortion money. So
all he had to do was take his damn passport. Keep him in the country. He shouldn't have left Aruba. Too many people know who this man is, how he looked.
But they could have indicted him here in the United States, extradited him, had him in Alabama.
Absolutely.
They could have stacked the charges against him.
And how do you think locking up in Aruba, Greta, gets him to help prove the murder case against himself?
Well,
His words aren't going to do it, but some kind of corroboration. He leads somebody to a site, he picks up a piece of evidence, then you make a murder case. Without this case
He's never been in a jail in the United States, Jim. He's never been in a jail in the United States. He should have been extradited to Alabama, and I guarantee you he'd have started talking down there.
And